Hello and welcome to another edition of Hot Topic. This week I'm talking to Councillor Philip Jackson, leader of the Conservative group on North East Lincolnshire Council. Philip, many thanks for coming in.
Hello.
Now we must just talk about the most recent events about local politics. North East Lincolnshire Council voted to accept the idea of Lincolnshire devolution and a greater mayoralty for Lincolnshire as a whole from the Humber to the Wash. Lincolnshire County Council voted against that idea, and in order for that idea to come about, the Prime Minister has said, all the local authorities involved must accept the idea of that piece of devolution and its mayoralty. So has Lincolnshire County Council effectively vetoed the idea of a greater Lincolnshire authority?
Well, I think it's rather early to jump to that conclusion. My understanding is that talks are going on behind the scenes, possibly as we speak. The other local authorities across the Greater Lincolnshire area who've already voted in favour are still keen to proceed, and hopefully some arrangement can be arrived at whereby the deal is still able to proceed. So, not sure what the eventual outcome will be, but I'm hopeful that talks will be productive, shall we say.
Let me just, forgive me for asking a little bit about the process here, but the County Council in Lincolnshire is a party to this. The unitary authorities of North Lincolnshire and North East Lincolnshire are the district councils in Lincolnshire. Do they have the veto as well, as it were?
Yes, I mean, as you rightly said in your opening remarks, the government said that all 10 authorities had to agree, and I think so far 5 or 6 of the 10, I'm not sure which, have voted in favour. It was unfortunate the direction that Lincolnshire County Council took yesterday, and I certainly wasn't expecting that one. Didn't see that coming. But as I say, hopefully, discussions have been ongoing, and hopefully we might find a way through it.
In your council, North East Lincolnshire Council, the vote in favour was pretty much unanimous. There was no party division over the issue. Everybody, all 42 of you, I think, pretty much were in support of it.
Well, the only party that was against it were the Liberal Democrats, but
they have three out of 42 votes.
Labour, Conservative and UKIP all voted in favour, yes.
Why? Why do you like the idea so much?
Well, I mean, basically it's an opportunity for more power and influence to come from Whitehall and from the government regional office into Lincolnshire. It enables us to have more freedom in the things we want to do, be able to determine our future. It brings additional funding in, control over areas like education and highways, potentially housing. It also raises the profile of Lincolnshire, not only nationally but also round the table with government, which I think is very important. So, I think although it's not a perfect deal by any means, as far as North East Lincolnshire is concerned, and the other authorities within the Lincolnshire area, it's the only game in town at the moment, and if we want to take advantage of the benefits that the government is offering authorities who want to become involved in devolved deals, it's the only route to take. So it's a pragmatic decision, which overall will be of benefit to North East Lincolnshire and the wider Lincolnshire area, in my view.
When the announcement came through that the Lincolnshire County Council had turned down the proposition, the Minister for the Northern Powerhouse, Andrew Percy, most of whose constituency is itself in Lincolnshire, or in North Lincolnshire, he seemed absolutely furious, absolutely seething at the idea that people could turn down as much as £500 million in central government money over the next decade and a half or so. What on earth got into Lincolnshire County Council's head?
Well, I don't know. I mean, as I said a few moments ago, I didn't see that one coming.
We can speculate
after the
event.
And certainly, my understanding of the discussions that have gone on behind the scenes leading up to the deal being put together was that Lincolnshire was fairly supportive. Lincolnshire County Council was fairly supportive. So, whether or not it's around people being concerned about losing power, or whether it's concerned about having an elected mayor for the whole of what is quite a large geographical area. Those were some of the reasons, I guess, that might have led to that. But I personally think it's very short-sighted.
Well, there is a certain you can understand a certain human instinct to try to maintain power. It's not necessarily very creditable, but perfectly understandable. North East Lincolnshire, I suppose, by wanting this, is almost voting itself out of existence.
Well,
isn't
no, not at all. No, I mean, there is no intention in any of the devolution deals across the country for local government reorganisation to take place. So the individual local authorities, the 10 local authorities within Lincolnshire, will continue to exist constitutionally as they do at the moment. And so none of them will be surrendering powers unless any of them agree to. It's around them working together more closely. It's around them being able to look more strategically at the development of the area around housing and highways, those sort of issues, education. It's around sharing additional funding that's going to come from central government. And for me, a large part of it is also around encouraging those local authorities to work more efficiently together, to share back office services, to maybe share some frontline services, and to save money for the council taxpayer.
Well, efficiency is no doubt very important, but if that's the case and the local authorities as they currently stand are still going to be there, and of course central government's still going to be there, then one of the main criticisms of the mayoralty and of the devolution as a whole is that it's just adding an extra layer of government. However efficiently the local authorities, the districts, the unitary authorities, the county, the cities can work together, that's still an extra layer of government that doesn't seem to have been necessary up to now and can only cost more in terms of the administration of government than the present two-layer system.
Well, that's certainly been one of the criticisms that have come from a number of councillors and from the public as well in the consultations that have gone on, and I guess that's understandable, but the government has said that if you want devolution, a key part of that is having an elected mayor. Their contention is that the elected mayor will help to pull together the authorities within the devolved area, will act as a figurehead, and will add more dynamism to the whole process of a devolved authority. Now, you can have a debate about whether you agree with that or not, but the government has said that if you want devolution, an elected mayor comes with it. So for those who don't like the idea, it's unfortunately something you've just got to bite the bullet over and accept.
So if you want the £500 million, you've got to have an elected mayor as well. That's the proposition.
Well, that's right. And of course, as I mentioned, it's not just that initial £500 million that you're talking about. It's additional powers and funding that might come from subsequent devolution streams if the first one is implemented and is successful.
I just want to put one more criticism of the devolution idea that people have been coming up with, which is that Lincolnshire, while it is a historic county and has that status, it's really not. There's not that much commonality. There's heavy industry and shipping on the Humber, the steelworks, thank goodness, still going on in Scunthorpe, chemical, food processing, wind power, of course, and then there's vast amounts of agricultural land, and then down in the wolds and the marsh are different as well, and then down in the south there's a completely different sort of economy with vegetable farming and down in the fens. That there's not much in common. If you had a sort of unitary authority for Northamptonshire, then you could probably find that you don't have to drive very far. But in Lincolnshire, such a vast territory, the north and the south of the counties have very little in common.
Well, yes, and that's another point that the sceptics have made, and I think is one of the potential criticisms of the Lincolnshire devolution area. But having said that, as I said earlier, there are no other games in town at the moment. Some people had talked about the possibility of a pan-Humber devolution deal, so the north and the south bank of the Humber. Which do have quite a lot in common.
But we've tried that before, and nobody wants Humberside
exactly.
Back.
I mean, it wouldn't be sellable politically to the local electorate, and I think part of the devolution deal has to be something which is acceptable to the local population. But having said all that, it's important that we retain North and North East Lincolnshire, retain their links across the Humber, and continue to work in the Humber local enterprise partnership, as well as being part of the Greater Lincolnshire Local Enterprise Partnership.
So it's almost you're describing two spheres, a sort of a political sphere which would be Lincoln and Lincolnshire centred, and an economic sphere which would be Humber centred. Well, for your own area, for North East Lincolnshire. Well, and yes, that would be in two camps, as it were.
Well, the economics are still very important within Greater Lincolnshire as well, and I mean, we do have a fair amount in common with Lincolnshire, as well as geographically. I mean, we have things like tourism. The agricultural hinterland helps to supply the food processing industry in North East Lincolnshire, for example. So you know, we do have historic ties with Lincolnshire, as you rightly pointed out. But at the same time, it's important that we retain the business links across the Humber. And I think the government's made it fairly plain that it's more interested now in flexibility and what works rather than having sort of fixed arrangements. So I don't think there's any...
I must stop you there as we go for a break. Join us again in a couple of minutes. Welcome back. I'm still with Councillor Philip Jackson, leader of the Conservative group on North East Lincolnshire Council. Philip, we've just talked at length about the idea of Lincolnshire devolution. Let's move on to another sort of devolution. The United Kingdom, as I'm sure you've noticed, seems to have devolved itself from the European Union. You were in support of this, I think.
I was, yes. I was a keen Brexiteer and campaigned in the run-up to the referendum, yes.
It doesn't seem to have worked out all that well just in the last few months since June the 23rd. The pound seems to be plummeting, which makes it tougher for people in North East Lincolnshire, as elsewhere in the country, to buy anything that involves foreign imports.
Well, I don't think it's worked out any differently in the first few months to how I expected it would do. I think I predicted at the time that there would be a period of churn and flux within the economy, and I think that's probably going to be the case for the next 3 or 4 years, but I think eventually it will be to our benefit. I mean, with regard to the falling pound, I mean, there were arguments before the referendum that the pound was too high, and of course, when we were concerned at one point about the fact that the economy might actually go into a deflationary situation. So now we've got a lower pound, and as you rightly say, it makes imports more expensive, which can add to inflation. But the positive side, of course, is that it makes exports more competitive. And we've already seen a number of businesses and industries in North East Lincolnshire who export, who are saying that they're benefiting from a lower pound. It's making them more competitive abroad.
We will not rehash these issues ad nauseum, as I'm so tempted to do, because I want to take another consequence of that vote on June the 23rd, which was that there was a change of Prime Minister, and consequent to that, a change of Chancellor of the Exchequer. We lost George Osborne, who was a great champion of the Northern Powerhouse, sort of infrastructure and technology and research, unifying the north of England, including the Humber, belatedly, replaced by Philip Hammond, who, unlike Osborne, does not have a northern constituency. He's the MP for Runnymede. Have we lost the idea of the Northern Powerhouse? Do we mind if we have?
Well, I don't think we have. I think it was always a bit of an amorphous sort of concept anyway, but we've got Andrew Percy, of course, now a local member of Parliament, who's a sort of Northern Powerhouse minister. So in many ways, we've got somebody far more local who's focusing on that.
Yes,
so I don't think we've lost the concept.
He's not Chancellor of the Exchequer. He's not in the cabinet.
No, he's not Chancellor of the Exchequer yet. No.
Well, I'm sure he will be one day a splendid Prime Minister, but not quite today.
No.
So we've lost that advocate. What's your conception of what the Northern Powerhouse is?
Well, I think it was just shorthand really for the government signalling it wanted to try to rebalance the economy and try to encourage the local economies of the north of England and try to reduce the wealth differences between the north and the south of England through a variety of different routes. And I think that's absolutely right.
But largely by infrastructure investment, things like trains and roads connecting the large northern cities, and we're promised connecting both banks of the Humber into that system as well.
Yes, and also by encouraging things like devolution, for example, which I think again is another way of bringing more power, influence and funding to parts of northern England.
Devolution to people who reject devolution, though, in the case of Lincolnshire.
Not as yet. I think it's rather early to say that it's dead in Lincolnshire.
I just want to put the speech that Theresa May made, the leader of your party, at the conference the other week. It sounded it was almost Keynesian in terms of using government money to invest in especially infrastructure projects and then just sort of prime the pump of the economy, as it were. It's an absolute turnaround of an economic ideal or philosophy from that George Osborne was operating in trying to pay down the debt and the deficit and having an austerity plan. Has she changed the mind of the Conservative Party and thus your mind as well?
Well, I'm not sure that's necessarily the case, because I mean there's a difference between investing in capital projects which have long-term benefits and borrowing for that, but difference between that and borrowing for day-to-day revenue expenditure. And I think what the government is saying that they want to invest, and I think that the previous Chancellor was quite keen on that as well. You know, we saw quite large investments in the rail infrastructure, for example, even in this part of the world under the previous Chancellor. So maybe there's been a slight change of emphasis, but I'm not sure there's been a major change in policy.
I want just talk about the specific consequences for your council, North East Lincolnshire Council, from the referendum on June the 23rd. The current makeup of North East Lincolnshire Council is Labour has 20 councillors, Tories 10, UKIP 9, and those 3 lonely Liberals that you mentioned earlier on make up the rest. Since the referendum, the party is almost equal to you in numbers in the council. UKIP, does it still have a purpose? And are they busy in the council chamber thumping each other?
We've actually got 11 councillors now in the Conservatives, not 10.
I beg your pardon, Philip, sorry.
And over the last year, the UKIP have gone down from 9 to 5, so they've actually almost halved in the last year as a result of people going independent, defections, or losses in by-elections. So, you know, there's no doubt UKIP is on the wane, in my view. They don't have any significant effect, generally speaking, in the council chamber. It's the Conservatives who are providing the robust opposition. So, you know, there is a question mark about where they go from here.
I put my question very badly. It's my fault. It was I was taking it from a more psephological point of view, as it were. The last time there were elections to councillors, the results were that there were 10 UKIPs. Yes. Now, the fact that has disintegrated just within North East Lincolnshire Council is perhaps informative in its own right, and we can come to that. But just in terms of what the voters are electing, that they chose when given the choice in the last opportunities to elect, you know, almost a quarter of the council as UKIP. Do you still see them as a threat to the Conservative vote?
Yes, I mean, they're still going to take, we can't be complacent, they're still going to take some Conservative voters, no doubt about it, but I think they're probably an increasing threat to Labour in terms of the sort of direction that they're moving in nationally, from what I understand. You know, my experience on the doorstep and from talking to people is that a lot of disillusioned Conservative voters who went over to UKIP are now coming back to the Conservatives. They're pleased with the line that Theresa May is taking on a lot of issues. Obviously, they're pleased about the fact there's been a referendum and that the current Conservative government is embracing the fact that we're going to be coming out of Europe and is progressing with that. I mean, we've even got a government now which is supporting grammar schools again, which was another key UKIP policy at one time.
Well, I want to talk about you move very smartly onto grammar schools in North East Lincolnshire. There, what is the position with the schools in North East Lincolnshire Council as an education authority?
Well, we actually had a debate about grammar schools about a month or so ago at a full council meeting, and the council now formally supports, in principle, the government's position on grammar schools. A notice of motion proposed by myself and one of my colleagues was approved.
Now, this is a council with a minority Labour administration.
That's right, yes.
Does that surprise you?
Well, I was pleasantly surprised at the outcome, I have to say, yes. But I think it probably shows, you know, a direction in which thinking is moving. I mean, for me, you know, grammar schools would increase the amount of choice and options within the area. And we have a lot of children each day who are being bussed out of North East Lincolnshire to Caister Grammar School and to grammar schools in Louth. I would like to see those pupils retained within the area along with the money, and I think having a grammar school helps to market the area, make it more attractive to the professional people that we want to try and attract into the area, and help to retain them.
But does that not go contrary to what the Conservative Party's line on education was just a few months ago in terms of academies and free schools?
Well, I don't think it goes against them. I think it adds to them. The Conservatives are still supporting academies and free schools. The ability now of grammar schools to expand, or for new grammar schools to be potentially to be built, it is just adding to the choice and freedom within the education system.
In Grimsby, Immingham, Cleethorpes, which schools would you earmark for becoming grammar schools?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily earmark any of them for becoming grammar schools at the moment. It might be that if we decided we wanted a grammar school, that we would build a new one. I mean, in the local plan, we're looking to significantly expand the local housing offering and the number of new jobs in the area. There's going to be a need for additional school places, so maybe that would be an opportunity to build one.
You mentioned the local plan. We've got very little time, sorry to get this big subject in. When do you think the local plan will finally have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted?
Well, that's a very good question, because it's been delayed yet again, having had to go out for another round of public consultation.
It took 18 months to compose the Doomsday Book.
I know. The Conservative group on the council has been continually trying to accelerate the process. It's had yet another delay. It looks like it's probably going to be the middle of next year now before we have a fully legally compliant local plan.
Okay, well, we'll be extremely curious to see what that looks like. Philip, thank you very much for coming in. I wish we could talk about the local plan in more detail, but we can't. Thank you so much for coming in, and join me again for another hot topic next week.